News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag in the back that says USA.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm your host, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Thanks for joining me on your Saturday. As every week, I do my best to uphold values that will never ever die. Well, Forbes magazine has announced its list. They have released their list of the world's most powerful people. And this year, Vladimir Putin tops that list for the third year in a row. He is the world's most powerful person. And that is truly deserved. The other people on that list are number 2, Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. Number 3, President Barack Obama. And number 4, Pope Francis. Pope Francis was powerful, they say, because of his trips to the U.S. and to Cuba, the influence that he exerted on those trips. Barack Obama has slipped mostly because other world leaders have dominated the world stage. Number 2, especially Angela Merkel. She's really taken over the leadership of Europe, and especially in 2 regards. In the first place, she is the one who helped the Greeks during the entire financial crisis. She's the one that pushed through a deal to stabilize the situation there. And that had repercussions across the European Union. And in addition, most recently, as refugees pour out of the Middle East, it is the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, who has spearheaded a reaction. How do we deal with these refugees? She is the one that said that Germany should take on its fair share, and she has urged other European countries to take on a quota. She's imposed a quota, basically got them to agree to quotas for various countries to take on the refugees as they pour in. I don't think that's a very good idea, if you ask me, but nonetheless, she has been influential in getting things done. She's basically the leader of Europe, and the U.S. is nowhere to be seen. Where are we in terms of trying to assist Europe? We used to be very influential in European affairs. Now we are missing in action. Well, number 1, of course, is Vladimir Putin, and he certainly deserves it. He took over Crimea, and the world did nothing. He exerted more influence in the Ukraine, and the world has stood by and largely done nothing. And now he has embarked on a gambit into Syria. He has launched a military campaign into Syria, and the world is basically allowing him to do that. So he's consolidating his alliance with Iran. He's strengthening his influence in the Middle East. And he has declared that he is the one who is going to combat terrorism. He is going to go after these radical Muslim jihadists that are wreaking havoc across the Middle East and in the world at large. And the world is letting him do it. What choice does the rest of the world have? So Vladimir Putin is taking over. He is dominating the world stage. And the Russian people respect him for it. He has tremendous popularity at home. The latest polls reveal that he has 89% support. So the people back him at home. There are those who say, well, the Russians are simply going to embroil themselves now into a massive quagmire into the Middle East. If you're used to an American foreign policy where military leaders have their hands tied behind their backs, where the troops on the ground have rules of engagement which ties their hands behind their backs, then yes, you would be very wary of any such military campaign. But that's not the case with the Russians. When Vladimir Putin says he's going to do something, he goes in it fully committed. As he did when it was time to stand up to the radical jihadists in Chechnya, he buried them. And so I don't think you're going to see the same twisted foreign policy by Vladimir Putin that we have seen in all the years that our president has been in office. Vladimir Putin is a man of action. He is a man who sets clear goals, and he uses maximum force to achieve those goals, unlike our president. So no, I don't think he's going to get caught up in a quagmire. And some people are saying, well, if you actually observe what he's doing, he is not going after ISIS. He's actually attacking the rebels who are fighting Assad. And to that I say, well, take a good look at a map of Syria and look at the areas that are dominated by Assad and look at the areas dominated by the rebels and by ISIS. In order to combat ISIS, anybody that wants to strengthen the government in Syria has to begin by going after the anti-Assad rebels. They're in the way of getting to ISIS. There's no other way of doing it geographically. So I think that's a completely nonsensical argument. And I think that from Vladimir Putin's point of view, it's not so much that he cares to support Assad as a man. All he really wants is to achieve some kind of stability in Syria. And yes, whatever government is there, he will have tremendous influence over it because he'll be the one that has essentially saved it or propped it up. So that's his goal. And in so doing, he will strengthen his hand in the Middle East, grow his influence there, and bring stability. He'll help to end this refugee crisis, and he will fulfill Russia's historic role of protecting the Christians. Because when we talk about so many of these massacres are basically, by and large, against Christians. So this week also we saw that a plane went down, and all the reports pouring in at this time indicate that it was probably a bomb that brought the plane down. We don't yet know 100%, but it looks like it. And if that's the case, certainly Vladimir Putin is going to be even more ruthless, even more unbending, even more focused in destroying ISIS. An ISIS-linked group is currently claiming responsibility for that bomb. That bomb killed over 200 passengers, mostly Russian, who were traveling from a resort in Egypt back home. And that bomb also killed dozens of children who were aboard that plane. One of the most heartbreaking images that is flashing across television screens going around the world really is that of a child, a 10-month-old child, staring out a window just before boarding that plane. And that image clearly shows us the innocence and the beauty of the life that was so callously shred to pieces by what looks likely to be an act of total barbarity. So if it is proven to be that it was a bomb, Vladimir Putin is going to be even more aggressive, even more undaunting in achieving his goal of eradicating ISIS, and his stock in the world is going to continue to soar. You know, there are those who argue that America should do more. But with this government, there really is no other game in town. Barack Obama doesn't really know what he is doing. in responding to the growing presence and strength of Russia, what has he decided to do? He is going to now send 50 special operation forces in Syria. Yes, you heard that right, 50. Not 500, not 5,000, 50. Anybody with any kind of common sense will tell you that 50 men, regardless of how capable they may be, cannot do very much in combating hundreds and hundreds, especially hundreds who are willing to blow themselves up to achieve a goal. It's impossible. So the half-hearted president continues with half measures, no, less than half measures in pursuing war. You know, I would respect him more if he would simply say, I don't want to do this. I'm withdrawing all troops from the Middle East. Let somebody else take care of it. Believe it or not, I would disagree with that approach, but I would respect him more. I would say, okay, this is a clear policy. It has a clear goal. It has a clear objective. And it's actually decisive and it's thorough. But what he does, withdraws troops in Iraq and then drip, drip, drip sends more troops. We don't want any boots on the ground in Syria. Now drip, 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 drip. We have 50 going to Syria. We're going to train rebels. No, we're not going to train rebels. This policy has failed. All of these twists and turns, all of this meandering, all of this half-baked war strategy, it's deplorable. It's disgusting. It's pathetic. If you truly love the men and women that you are putting in harm's way, you do not pursue half measures. You go all in order to keep them safe, in order to ensure that the mission can properly be carried out. But no, not our president. Not this weakling. Not this foggy-minded commander-in-chief. Foggy-headed. Doesn't seem like he can think straight. War requires a full commitment. The very definition of war is going all out. It is an oxymoron to go in with half measures. It contradicts the very word war. So to the war hawks who say we should do more with this leader, no, please, don't do more. He doesn't want to do more. He can't do more. He doesn't know what he's doing. There is a vacuum. And in that vacuum now, we face only two questions. Either ISIS grows or some other power steps in there. And I definitely prefer that some other power, like Russia, steps in there and really teaches those terrorists a lesson, truly destroys them, destroys their movement, and destroys their ideology. At this point, Vladimir Putin is the only game in town, and he truly has assumed the mantle of world leadership. And he now is our best hope, our only hope for defeating radical Islam. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com, upholding values that will never die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back. Heating up the election news this week is Donald Trump. As he seems to be so often at the head of the news, he certainly has a gift for making his presence known. Well, this time there is a vile video an absolutely disgusting video that has been produced by those who despise his immigration policy. It is called Deport Racism 2016. It is produced by this group, and they have launched a campaign whereby they are using children to attack Donald Trump's policies. These children, they are Hispanic children who use foul language to attack Donald Trump as a racist, as an anti-Hispanic bigot. They basically say that it is their country, especially those who are born here, that the Constitution guarantees their right to be here, and that it is truly deplorable from their perspective that they are told to go back home when, as they put it, this is our country. And it is truly deplorable, they say, from their point of view, that their families are threatened because some of these children have parents or grandparents who are illegal. So there's one moment in this video in which one of the children says, "You're not going to deport my grandmother." This video, in fact, could have been an extremely effective one. Imagine it had been done without foul language, without children flipping the finger, without children behaving in a way that it's very difficult to see, would win any kind of sympathy. I mean, I don't understand how any parent would allow a child to behave this way in a video. So that turns most people off. But imagine for a moment if you had sympathetic children speaking politely, raising a couple of key points, like, if I'm born in this country, the Constitution grants my right to be here. And since I'm allowed to be here, are you really going to take my grandma away from me? Are you really going to take my parents away from me? So that would have been actually a very compelling video that would be productive to the public dialogue on what we do with our immigration crisis. Instead, this video is shocking. Shocking because children are being, obviously encouraged to speak in this deplorable manner, to use foul language, to flip the bird, but shocking in how hateful the video is. It's supposed to be taking a stand against racism and hate, but in reality, it embodies hate. And it's counterproductive. It turns people off rather than galvanizes support for their cause. So this video is going to do what so many other attacks on Trump have done. It only encourages people to support him more. When an attack is vile and disgusting and below the belt, we have seen people rally to Donald Trump, to the point that some are even immune from hearing any arguments against him because they assume any arguments against him are coming from that same place of vicious attack. So this video is totally counterproductive. But it highlights what Republicans do need to do. Because as I said, had that video been done in a different manner, it would have been actually quite devastating, really devastating. And it could present the policies that Donald Trump is putting forward as actually cruel and ruthless and un-American, because it defies the rights enshrined in the Constitution at this time for children born in this country. They are called, quote unquote, often called anchor babies, but truly at this time, the Constitution does guarantee their right to be American citizens. Now, what Republicans need to do is this. I'm one of those people who think we do need to get tough on illegal immigrants. What Republicans need to do is they need to keep emphasizing how this policy has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with dislike of brown skin. That's one of the phrases in the video. It has nothing to do with a dislike of any one group or any one people. It's not anti-Hispanic. It's not anti-Spanish. It's not anti-dark-skinned. In fact, protecting borders and protecting the right of this country to determine its own borders and uphold its own laws, is actually good for Hispanics. Republicans have to keep emphasizing it. They have to keep saying that there are really Hispanics who are hurt profoundly by this society that doesn't protect its borders. There are two sets of Hispanics who are profoundly hurt by it. One is those who have put in the paperwork to come into this country legally, who have excellent skills, who can make a great contribution, who are law-abiding, and they are stuck waiting and waiting and waiting because this country only allows a very small percentage of folks to come in legally because we have our hands full with all the illegals. So Republicans have to keep emphasizing that if we truly care for Hispanics around the world, we are the party of a legal structure and firm borders. So we can do this right. And then there's a whole other set of Hispanics who are harmed by this influx of illegals, and that is so many Hispanics, legal immigrants to this country, who hold jobs where wages are being depressed by this influx of illegals. And so they have a harder and harder time making ends meet. In addition, we are the party of compassion, because as we uphold our borders, we defend the rights of the working class, African Americans, white, Hispanics, the working class who struggle to make ends meet. And we want to make sure that their wages are not depressed to the point that you work and work and work and you could barely feed yourself and your family. And hence, you give up and join the welfare rolls. We have to keep making the point that we are the true champions of the blacks, of the Hispanics, of the whites who are underprivileged. And we are the true champions of those around the world who are underprivileged and who seek an opportunity and who want to come to this country and do it right. In reality, we represent a much larger number of people. If you think about how many people all around the world want to come to this country legally, and they now cannot, versus those who entered here illegally. So we have the bigger hearts. You know, even some of the Republican candidates who are for a pathway to citizenship, like Jeb Bush, they cast the debate as they're the compassionate ones. They're the ones who present an act of love, quote unquote. The immigrants, Jeb Bush said, committed an act of love by coming here. And he, by extension, recognizing that act of love, presents himself as the compassionate one. We have to say, no, no, no. Those of us who support laws, we are even more compassionate because ultimately we represent the interests of many, many more underprivileged people. So Donald Trump is under fire once again, and I hope that those who want strong borders use the language of compassion to achieve our goals. Donald Trump is also under fire for some of the humor that he has put forward in promoting his appearance on Saturday Night Live. He's going to be on Saturday Night Live, and as he says it, the ratings are going to be huge. I have no doubt. In one of those promos, he calls Ben Carson a total loser. He then withdrew that promo. And here we have political correctness run amok. When he made that promo, it's obvious that he is spoofing himself. He's spoofing himself as the man that always brags, he's always the best, and everybody else is totally incompetent. Everybody knows that Ben Carson is not a total loser. That's preposterous. He is one of the country's leading surgeons. He has been for years. He's a man who has a huge record of achievement and accomplishment. So for Donald Trump to say that, it is clearly a joke. And this country needs a sense of humor. I'd love to be able to laugh more. I don't know about you, but I need to laugh more. And often when I'm looking for a movie to watch, I sometimes scroll and read the premises of comedies that are available. They never seem funny. Even when I actually tell myself, you know what, let me give it a chance. I need to laugh more. Let me go and see a comedy. As I recently saw Pitch Perfect 2, I didn't really laugh very much. I never find them funny. And Donald Trump is funny. He should be allowed to be funny. And what's wrong with a politician who can talk policy and also be lighthearted and make some jokes, poke fun at himself and poke fun at his opponents? You know, Ronald Reagan was funny. He had the gift of humor. He knew how to deliver a humorous line. And I think that if we want to return to comedy in any meaningful sense in this country, we really need to ditch political correctness. Political correctness is a straitjacket for thought. It's a straitjacket for satire. It's a straitjacket for humor. It's turning our society dull and boring. And it's stifling one of the key characteristics of America. One of the elements that has defined us, our creativity, our dynamism, our genius, our ability to innovate. And to all those who are trying to stamp out humor of any kind, to all those who are trying to say Donald Trump shouldn't be on Saturday Night Live because of his political policies, because of what he said, we have to resist that. We need to be able to say what we want to say, make the jokes we want to make. We need to broaden our minds, broaden our hearts, not put them in various straitjackets of hate and conformity. You know, that's the great irony of liberalism. They always talk about having to smash conformity. They hate conformity. Be an individual. But it's always an individual in a straitjacket that they have created. They want you to be their kind of individual. They're politically correct, thoughtless, sexually perverse individual. That's their individual. That's not my individual. I want to see individualism that truly respects the talent and the genius within every human being. I don't want to see. We make a small joke about a brilliant neurosurgeon, and the joke is really about Trump himself. When he says Ben Carson is a total loser, he's making fun of Donald Trump for being the kind of guy that's always bragging and always putting everybody else down. He's making fun of Donald Trump. And we've come to a point in our society where we're so overly sensitive and overly prickly that we can't even see humor, satire, when it's right before our eyes. We need to stand tall and strong for the kind of American individualism that allows thought and speech and humor to be truly free. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that will never die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Oh, baby, baby, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in this game. Oh, baby, baby, you think I'm in love, dancing from above.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I am your host, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Another day, another Hillary Clinton scandal. New information this week spelling out exactly what the Democratic presidential candidate and her aides did regarding the handling of classified information. They signed a specific non-disclosure agreement. Prior to her taking on her job, she signed an agreement which is called the Sensitive Compartmental Information Non-Disclosure Agreement. And that lays out some very specific criminal penalties for, quote, any unauthorized disclosure of classified information. Now, we have known for a while that she signed this agreement, but recently, due to a Freedom of Information request, we now have the exact language of the non-disclosure agreement. So this is a statement within the agreement. Quote, I have been advised that the unauthorized disclosure, unauthorized retention, or negligent handling of SCI by me could cause irreparable injury to the United States or be used to advantage by a foreign nation. So she's talking about specific classifications in that email, and she acknowledges that if she violates the agreement, she is subject to criminal penalties. And we know for a fact that she received at least 2 emails while she was Secretary of State on her personal server that have since been marked top secret or sensitive compartmental information. Now, this information that was sent to her private server, basically her server was not authorized to handle it. And she has said that, at the time that it was sent, the information was not marked as classified when it was sent or when it was received. However, what we know now is that the language of this non-disclosure agreement tells us that it was clearly Clinton's responsibility to figure out whether information that was coming into a private server and was being sent out was in fact classified. Here's another quote. Quote, I understand that it is my responsibility to consult with appropriate management authorities in the department in order to ensure that I know whether information or material within my knowledge or control that I have reason to believe might be SCI, the agreement says. So, in fact, it was within her, it was an obligation of hers, it was within her responsibility to consult with management to make sure that she didn't violate any sensitive information. People that have been talked to, people that have been asked questions about this in the know, like counterterrorism officials, they have said to the press that when you receive top secret information, it screams at you on the page. If you receive an email containing it, you know right away that it's sensitive, that it has to be protected. And so it's very clear that she would have been able to recognize it if it came into her own private server. And we know now that it's obvious that she didn't care. She truly didn't care. She didn't care if she was going to jeopardize national security. What she cared most about was making sure that she could conduct her business outside of the watchful eyes of the American public. That's clearly what all this is about. Now, what's interesting is we still need to see whether or not the FBI is going to impose criminal penalties upon her. The non-disclosure agreement that she signed states without any shadow of a doubt that there would be stiff criminal penalties for any kind of unauthorized disclosure of top secret information. And in her case, it's as clear as day that she was violating it. We know now that hundreds of emails, up to 600, have been posthumously classified as confidential. Some of it being released to the press is redacted. There's so much redacted on it that it's obvious that there was a lot there that was highly sensitive enough that could even endanger other people's lives. As we've seen, one of the emails really leaks an operative, a CIA operative, has the name of a CIA operative working in the field. That email could have endangered that individual's life. We need to see now is the FBI really going to uphold the letter of the law? The letter that is very clear. The very same letter of the law that was upheld for David Petraeus, who basically conducted not even 1/100th of an infraction of the Secretary of State. All he did was give his personal biographer a binder with some classified information, and she had clearance. Instead, what we see in the way that Hillary Clinton conducted her affairs is that she didn't care. She wasn't careful enough, let's just put it that way. Who saw classified information? Her two top aides, Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin, also signed copies of this non-disclosure form. And nonetheless, we know that Cheryl Mills, for example, sent classified information to other officials like Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea at the Clinton Foundation. So we know that from a State Department, an email released by the State Department. Any individual working within the State Department was required by law to make absolutely sure that information that they sent out was unclassified before they sent it out. And we see now a pattern of utterly reckless behavior by Hillary Clinton and her aides, Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin. They were essentially operating according to their own rules, according to their own wishes, according to their own desires. We see now a whole pattern of conduct. You know, I'm waiting for the FBI to indict her. I'm waiting for it. If we truly have an honest and fair American system of justice, the FBI should be meting out a very swift indictment. They shouldn't take too long. They shouldn't wait for her power to rise, and then they're going to feel like, for political reasons, they can't do it. I really hope they go forward and do their job as swiftly as possible. I'm wondering what's taking so long. It's as clear as day that there is evidence to indict her. And you know what we see? Even if, let's assume the worst, the FBI doesn't indict her, we now have a mountain of evidence that the Republicans can use against her. And I really hope that they unload on her in the general election, that they don't hold back their punches as Bernie Sanders did, which I think was a fatal mistake. Even he is realizing that it was a mistake and is now starting to be more aggressive in going after her. But I hope the Republicans don't make the same mistake that Mitt Romney made in 2012, where he really didn't pound the president for all the mistakes and misdeeds of his presidency, where he ran the campaign with white gloves. What we need is a Republican that's really going to take the fight to her, that's really going to pound her on this. And not just the mishandling of classified information, it's an entire pattern of behavior that shows that the Clintons believe that all of the rules, whether they be legal or ethical, they just don't apply to them. Just like the way that Huma Abedin, Clinton's top aide, had multiple jobs at the same time. 4 jobs at the same time in conflicts of interest with one another. And they don't care because the rules don't apply to them. It's almost as though they are the head of an oligarchy, a family that is entitled to be at the helm of power and then entitled to make and break the rules as they see fit. This is so disturbing because what does it really mean? If we don't stop it and we allow Hillary Clinton to become the president of the United States, she will continue this pattern of lawlessness, which is not just breaking American laws, but it's also a danger to everyone around her, because as president, she will truly have the justice system under her control, and she will also have the NSA at her beck and call. And you got to wonder how all that power is going to be used. We saw what Barack Obama did with the IRS, how certain individuals within the republic were targeted purely for their political beliefs. And if I were a Republican candidate, I would link those two things together. We see that Hillary Clinton has a pattern of lawless behavior. Is that lawless behavior going to be used, should she become president of the United States, to target various individuals, just like the IRS targeted conservatives? Is Hillary Clinton going to continue that pattern to go after political enemies? And that's going to erode the key rights of citizens within this republic and render our republic less and less an American republic and more just another government similar to governments around the world, where when people come in power, their opponents are crushed by the power of the government. That's what occurs in most countries. And by the grace of God, it hasn't been the overriding pattern in this nation. But if we allow Hillary Clinton to get away with this, this pattern of lawless behavior, we are guaranteeing that our nation no longer upholds its sacred American principles and looks more and more like just another broken government. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that are never going to die.
What do you mean? When you nod your head yes, but you wanna say no. What do you mean? Hey, yeah. When you don't want me to move, but you tell me to go. What do you mean?
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Get off in this club, have me a good time before my time is up. Hey, let's get it now. Ooh, I want the time of my life. Oh, baby.
Welcome back to the broadcast. I want to share with you a fascinating experience that I had this week. I went to see a movie directed by Steven Spielberg, written by the Coens, and starring Tom Hanks. It is Bridge of Spies, and it is absolutely remarkable. First of all, it's got a tremendous cast, an outstanding cast, including a man who in the film is accused of being a Russian spy. His name is Abel, and he's played by a Tony Award-winning actor. And the combination of Tom Hanks with this counterpart is absolutely astounding. The movie is truly refreshing because it takes you back to a different time and place. It takes place in 1957. And a lawyer in New York, James Donovan, he's asked to defend a man, a foreigner, who is accused of being a spy for the Russians. It's essentially a Cold War spy thriller, but one unlike anything you've ever seen before, because there isn't really much violence in the movie, and it centers around the art and the gift of negotiating. This lawyer is called to render a service to his country, first to try to come up with a good defense for this man accused of being a spy, and then to travel to East Berlin to try to free Americans in harm. One, a pilot whose plane crashes and he's then captured by the Russians, and another, a student who is imprisoned in East Germany. So this lawyer, James Donovan, travels there to negotiate the release of these prisoners in exchange for the Russian spy that he defended. It is a brainy drama that nonetheless has you on the edge of your seat. What is absolutely astonishing about the movie, my first reaction, my first impression as I was sitting there, going back into the 1950s, you really feel like this movie takes you there, as though you've been put in a time machine and suddenly you find yourself in an entirely different America, an America that really is long gone, an America where patriotism was the norm rather than the exception, one might almost say, as it seems to be today. Patriotism was what was expected, even to the point of coercive conformity to that patriotism. It's refreshing because it recreates the 1950s, everything that was truly outstanding about America back then. And Spielberg has been absolutely masterful in recreating the time with such minutia attention to every single detail, from the cars to the furniture in the homes, the way the people spoke. And when you are in the theater and you literally feel like you're back in the 1950s, as one critic said, it's like being wrapped up in a comfortable, warm blanket. Because on that screen, you see an America that once was a beautiful America, confident that its way of life is the greatest way of life on earth, sure of its values, and full of people who are good, who are decent, as this lawyer, James Donovan, is. He is a regular guy who is tasked by his government to do something extraordinary. And he never loses his sense of what is truly decent in all the entanglements that he is maneuvering in, all the pressures that he's under by both governments. You might say three governments: the East German government, the Russian government, and the American government. He never loses his moral compass. He never loses his common sense. He never loses his decency. He never loses his respectability, his honor. Tom Hanks plays this man brilliantly. And I encourage everyone to go see this movie. I think we really need to endorse movies of this nature. I wish Hollywood would produce a lot more of them. And why do I say that? Well, first, it's an homage to who we are, our greatest ideals, the greatest ideals of our republic. Second, it also celebrates American exceptionalism. What makes us great? How are we different than other countries? This movie really draws a sharp contrast between America during the Cold War and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And it shows that ultimately the moral principles guiding this nation were far superior to those that were influencing the regimes of the East Germans or of the Soviet Union. And that's why we triumphed ultimately. We triumphed because our principles were sound and our people were good, as we see by this character, James Donovan. And by the way, all of this entire story, it is true. It is based on real life events. And that's what's all the more astonishing, that everything you see as masterfully as it's portrayed on the screen, actually really happened in this country. So it is exceptional in all these ways, and it's truly a breath of fresh air to see a man on the screen that is really reminiscent of a James Stewart type of character, someone who is called to do something great and is able to step up to the plate and actually achieve greatness in his own humble way. The script is masterful. It has some touches of humor that really lighten the mood and allow you to relate to the character all the more. And what we see in this movie is what makes a hero. What is a true hero? And especially, what makes an American hero? The movie is really inspiring. You walk out of it loving America. I mean, when was the last time you walked out of a movie loving your country? And you walk out of the movie also wanting to be great, aspiring to be great, being inspired by somebody like James Donovan, who rose to the challenge and was truly great. So if you're looking to escape the present for a couple of hours, and if you like spy thrillers as I do, I strongly recommend you take some time this weekend or whenever you have a moment and go and see this film. We need to endorse movies like this. The more we do so, the more we have a hope and a chance of transforming our culture. We've got to tell Hollywood, these are great movies. We want more of these movies. We're sick and tired of movies which are, number one, made for idiots with a very low IQ, that are full of boring car chases, unnecessary violence, gratuitous sex, thin plots, superficial characters. Instead, give us quality. And give us not just artistic quality, as you see in this movie, but quality from A to Z. Acting quality, writing quality, the recreation of the past in such expert detail. And most important of all, quality in the values that are depicted. A quality piece of art. That's what this movie is. A quality piece of art that makes us better. I believe that Tom Hanks should win an Academy Award for his performance. So should Steven Spielberg. And so should the supporting actor. These men have truly created a tour de force, one which I believe will turn out to be an American classic, and one that gives me hope that the more we endorse movies like this, the more we celebrate movies like this, we have a chance to turn around this culture which produces so much garbage and return to our better selves, our higher selves, our truer selves, our American selves that really make a mark, not just in the craftsmanship that we produce, but in the values and the morals that we disseminate both in this country and around the world. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you go out and enjoy it, and I look forward to spending some time with you next week.
With the stars and stripes and the eagle fly. It's a big old land with countless dreams, and happiness ain't out of reach. Hard work pays off the way it should. Yeah, I've seen enough to know that we've got it good. Where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.